Oh no. Oh, looks like they're denying me access. What fucking assholes.
The YouTube?
Yeah. Okay, that's weird. Let me try that again. Let me see what went wrong with this. This is which account? All right. I'm having to close this window. Let me see if that'll help. Unfortunately, I had your bio already on this one place, and I need to make sure it's going to go to the other place. So they
Okay.
banned me all over the fucking place and on YouTube and everything. So I had to
Wow.
make a fake account kind of thing. And
Wow.
yeah, I'm just so banned. It's just insane. All right, hold on. Let's try this again. I don't know why they did that though.
They find out it's really you, or
Um,
it must feel great to be so banned.
oh, I think we might be live. Yeah, it says we're live. So, wow, I don't know. It's kind of a weird picture. I can't really tell. It doesn't
Right.
show us, but I don't know what's going on. This something is being what? I don't know what they're trying to say. Is being live streamed.
Are you able to record it and then post it later, or
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna record it. That's what I'm doing right now, making sure this recording is working. Okay, and I think let's just see if there's another way. I don't know how people stream. Okay, I'm just gonna go with it. Okay, so we we might be live, we might not. I don't know what's happening. They told me it was private. I had to sign in. They wouldn't let me sign in. I'm signed in already. I don't understand what's going on. So, hi everyone. I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot. Very happy to be here today. And I have David Sereda with me as my guest. And David, I had your lovely bio right in front of me when I had to zoom out of those pages because they were trying to ban me over on YouTube. So I don't know what's happening right this second, but I don't have your bio anymore in front of me. So I can't give you a good introduction. I can say that you are, I think you're something of an aerospace expert. And I know you're a philosopher and you also build amazing devices and healing devices, etc. So why don't you introduce yourself? And David has been on my show before, but it's been quite a while, and it's actually very exciting to have you back.
well, good to be back, Carrie. It's always good to be on your show. I started actually with Art Bell in the year 1999 or 2000. I can't remember when that date was. And then I moved on to George Norrie when Art Bell retired. And I've been on the History Channel, Discovery Channel, Learning Channel, and ABC News, Fox News, a lot of outlets to reach the masses about my discoveries in the field of ufology, exotic sciences, consciousness, ecology. I even covered the Fukushima disaster because I worked for major Nobel Prize winning and MIT PhD physicists on nuclear fusion and advanced detection of all sorts of things we were detecting, bombs, contraband, and subatomic particle physics. So with my background, my first experience with UFO appearing to me was in 1968. I was born in 1961, so I was 7 years old in Berkeley, California. When you see one for yourself and you have a consciousness interaction with these intelligentsia, it changes you forever. And of course, I was only 7 years old, so it changed my whole life. So coming into this eclipse is so astounding what's really going on here. And I'm going to present something that, unless you've seen my other presentations, is very, very new on this particular eclipse. And I wouldn't be going public with this if I didn't think this was utterly astounding what's really going on in this eclipse. And so I'm going to start with a graphic, and this particular graphic is my interpretation on it. This graphic shows first, and I remember this because I was, I was in the deep part of this eclipse. The August 21st eclipse of 2017 is exactly when Oumuamua was coming in to visibility in the solar system, and it gets publicly noted October the 19th. So that's, only 2 months later, which is more than auspicious. It's very, very timely. Also, it is the birth date, the real physical birth date of Isa, Jesus Christ, Yeshua, in the Urantia book, but it's not just in the Urantia book. Mathematically, we can prove that that is the real date. The second eclipse on this great triangle is October 14th last year, which is the anniversary of the miracle of the sun at Fatima. And I'm going to demonstrate that a missing planetary body in our solar system that is not far away was responsible for the eclipse phenomena during the crucifixion of Christ. The miracle of the sun at Fatima clearly was an annular eclipse, but it was not an eclipse with the moon or Venus or Mercury. I'm going to show you the proof of what that really was. And the April 8th eclipse we're about to come into is the date for Easter in 1917, the year of the Fatima miracle. In fact, if you look here, before I go into what is incredibly visible in that triangle, you can see what a pattern of a lunar eclipse looks like over a 12-year span. You see, in 1917, which is the year of the Fatima, what I call the annular eclipse of a planet with an orbit of 139 days between Mercury and Venus, which I'll demonstrate very clearly, repeats 12 years later on April 8th, 1928, we had Easter again. And that's because we're following a lunar calendar, when at that time we were actually on the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar started in about the year 46 BC. So the Romans were on the Julian calendar, which is almost identical to the current Gregorian calendar. So when you're on a lunar calendar, you see this spiraling wave of dates because of the pattern and the orbiting of the moon around the earth. But actually, the real Easter, which was being contested for many decades by all the major churches, if they could just agree on when the original Easter actually happened, it is closer to today's April 8th than anything, because in their time in Julian and Gregorian were almost exactly the same in the beginning, but over a course of 500 years, which is when they changed to Gregorian, they drift apart just a little bit each year. So in 500 years, they drift quite a bit apart, and that's due to the accuracy of what we call sidereal timekeeping. Actually, in 2012, Easter was April the 8th. So when you come to this marker in this calendar here, you see that the eclipse is about to happen is April 8th. So that would be the true Easter. And when I measured the triangle, and this is a very accurate graphic in 2 dimensions, the angle of this triangle is the miraculous 26.3 degrees. And I'll demonstrate what that really is. The 26.3 degrees is the angle of ascension in the Great Pyramid. So I'm going to show you this right here. Nice shot here. This angle, according to Peter Missouri, who wrote the Great Pyramid, when you see the flat plane, so your ascending passage entrance from the lower right coming up is 26.3 degrees into the Grand Gallery, 26.3 degrees. And you can see that that angle, which is known as the angle of ascension, will enter into the Queen's chamber and the King's chamber. At the time of Moses, the measurements for the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant and the staffs were kept as a tent, was identical to the Queen's chamber, 10 by 10 royal cubits. And the holy place at the time of Moses was 10 by 20 cubits, which is identical to the King's chamber. So this angle decoded actually denotes a missing planet, which I will show you here in a second. So you go here and you see, and we're going to get into the real location of Sitchin's missing planet of the gods and the goddesses, etc. Is much closer to Earth than people actually realize. So let me go to I'm just looking for my graphic on my planets tilting. Here we go. So when you see what the tilt of the planets looks like, and I'm including Pluto as a dwarf planet because it's tilted at 120 degrees. Neptune is tilted at 28.5 degrees. Uranus is tilted at 98 degrees. Saturn, 26.7. Notice how close Saturn's 26.7 is to 26.3 degrees. Jupiter is tilted only at 3 degrees. Ceres is definitely a planet, tilted at 4 degrees, comparable in size to Pluto and Mercury, actually. Mars is tilted at 25 degrees. We're tilted on Earth at 23.5. Venus 3, I'm tilting my head here as I'm reading this, and Mercury 2 degrees. So guess what happens? I mean, no one's ever seen this before, what I'm about to show you. This is my work, brand new. So if I add up all the tilt angles of the planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, Ceres, Mars, Earth, Venus, Mercury, they total 333.7 degrees. As soon as I saw that number, I went, oh my God. I know exactly what that means, because if I take 360 degrees in a circle and minus 333.7, I've got 26.3 degrees, which is the angle of the ascending passage in the Great Pyramid. Now, if every one of those planets and their degree angles of tilt represent a planet, then 26.3 degrees has to represent a planet in our solar system, but we don't know where it is. And I will demonstrate that that body, that planet, is responsible for the eclipse phenomena during the crucifixion of Christ, because it was proven there was no lunar solar eclipse alignment, no Mercury or Venus transit during the crucifixion of Christ. And the miracle of the sun at Fatima, there was no lunar solar eclipse present, and there was no Venus transit present. So obviously a body in the solar system has eluded us for thousands of years, and it's written in stone in the Great Pyramid of Egypt, because you can't, you see, when you add 26.3 degrees to 333.7 degrees, you have exactly 360 degrees. Now, this is which is completion, which shows you the angles of all the planets, which gives us their procession is incomplete without this missing planet who is tilted at the same angle as the Great Pyramid of Egypt, which means the builder of the pyramid knew the secret. And the pyramid being almost exactly 139 meters in height without its capstone, we don't actually have actual proof that it had a capstone. So my planet that will fill the missing gap is the key. But before I get to that, I'm going to tell you two clues that are very clear. One, in the book of Revelation, chapter 6, verse 12, there's the clue. I'm going to show you Revelation 6:12 so you can see it. Nobody's noticed this. It says, this is the opening of the sixth seal. Then I watched while he broke open the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun turned as black as sackcloth, and the whole moon became like blood. So what is plainly obvious there is those are two different types of eclipses at the same time. You can't have the moon become as black as sackcloth at the same time is a blood red moon eclipse, because a blood red moon eclipse is when the sun aligns behind the earth and the shadow of the earth casts itself on the moon. And then at the same time as a traditional eclipse where the moon obscures the sun, you can't have that at the same time unless I'll demonstrate what this looks like with my three little solar eclipse cards. So there's your sun. And when you have a solar eclipse of the sun at totality, it's black. But you can't have the black of the moon become blood red unless there is another body that enters the system. And that is also, and when we look at the tilma of Juan Diego, and if you really study the tilma of Juan Diego and the reflections in the mother's eyes, of people, which is impossible unless it was like a real photograph. This appeared to Juan Diego in the year 1531. So we're very close to the changeover of the Julian to Gregorian calendar. And look at her feet. Notice the angel is lifting up a hidden black crescent moon. And people thought, oh, that's just a lunar eclipse underneath her dress. You can't get a black crescent under her dress unless you have this. So there's your sun, there's totality. Notice how I only have a luminous crescent, not a black crescent. You can't get a black crescent unless a third body enters the system, and there's your black crescent. Now, where is that missing body? And of course, Sitchin would have postulated that the 10th planet theory has a very, very long elliptical orbit that comes in our region every 3,600 or 700 years. It has a very long period. I can't remember the exact date of the period, but that's a theory based on an idea of how often this occurs. Now watch what happens here. This is where it gets really mind-boggling. So when my wife Crystal died, Gary, I don't think you and I have talked about this part yet. Not sure. And this is a very complete model. My wife calls out my name exactly the first time 243 days after she died. And I knew what that meant right away. I knew she was on Venus because a Venus day is 243 Earth days, meaning sunrise to sunset. Venus has the longest. Let me go back to my other graphic here of my so before we fulfill this, because we're going to fulfill this really clearly. A Venus day, Venus is the only planet in the solar system that, although it's tilted at a very low angle, it's spinning clockwise, whereas all the other planets are spinning counterclockwise. And Uranus is spinning clockwise, but it's out. If you had a river of water floating through here, because it's tilted at 98 degrees, it's not really spinning counterclockwise. It is, but it's spinning at 98 degrees, so it's on its side. So it's perfect, it's just like the way an electric current, when electric current flows through a copper wire this way, the magnetic field is 90 degrees this way. So Venus is the oddball. It is actually, I'm going to prove with very simple math that it is the gateway to planet 139, and planet 139 is going to line up with everything, including the miracle of the sun at Fatima on October 13th. And notice last year's eclipse was October 14th, so we're only one day different, which is easy to explain. So when you look at the direction of spin of subatomic particles, all of our electrons in all the atoms in all of our bodies and all of our planets are spinning the same direction as every planet except Venus. Now, a positron, a positive electron, which is invisible, spins the same direction as Venus, clockwise. Now, we've actually detected positive electrons and photograph them in bubble chambers during these high energy experiments. Now note that CERN is firing up its particle accelerator on April the 8th. And I believe the reason is they're looking at the state of antimatter during that eclipse. So, which it's going to become more clear what that is in a minute here. So let's go back now to my model that my wife gave me from the other side, which is perfect. It's just perfect. You're going to see this in a second. You're going to see in a second that there are planets that are positronic, therefore invisible, but they can become visible when they dip below the dimension of what we'll call the firmament. And our planets below the firmament will follow this pattern perfectly. So the next thing Crystal did is she called out my name 591 days after she died. And it's so loud, it wakes me up in the hotel room in Banff, Alberta, Canada. It was last spring that this happened. And I have the exact date. So it was 591 days after August the 9th, 2021. Now watch what that does. If I take, I'm going to actually have to delete this for a second, show my calculator. It's miraculous what that number does. So show my calculator so you can see this, and I'll go back to the graphic. If I take 591 days divided by the golden ratio, which is 1.6180339,887, I get Earth exactly. See, Earth is got that many decimals of accuracy of how many exact sidereal cosmic perfect days there are per year. So in a leap year, see, 365.25 is a quarter. Every 4 years, we absorb the 0.25. So this year, in February, we had 29 days. But it doesn't absorb the rest of it. The thousands column, the 10,000s column. So these other numbers, about every 130 something years, we lose another day, right? It's been 107 years since Fatima. No, so Fatima, we're 2024 minus 1917, the year of Fatima, which is when Easter was on April the 8th. It's been 107 years. This is a huge clue. So watch what happens. So that math showed me, actually, sorry, I have to go back to that. I didn't finish. Share screen, share calculator. So 591 divided by 1.6180339,887 is Earth. Divided by the golden ratio again, that's Venus, accurate to 99% of its current position. Divided by the golden ratio again is a planet that we don't know about that has an orbit of 139.516 days. Divided by the golden ratio again, that's Mercury. The accuracy is better than 87% on Mercury's current position. Divided by the golden ratio 2 more times, that's planet Vulcan's orbit. Planet Vulcan was discovered by astronomers to have an orbit of just under 20 days, but Vulcan would appear to the astronomers' telescopes and disappear, and appear and disappear. You can read all about it on Wikipedia. So how can a planet like Vulcan, which became a hypothetical planet, do that? How can a planet with an orbit of 139 days, and this 139 days is going to align with everything. I'm going to show people this. Okay, so you come to here, you come to my chart. So there's my wife calling my name up 591 days after she died, divided by the golden ratio once is Earth. It's 99.99% accurate. In fact, Earth's exact time can drift by 20 to 30 minutes every single year, and to as little as 7 minutes, and they don't know why. So there is no 100% accurate Earth day per year, but it is more than 365 and a quarter days a year. Divided by the golden ratio again, we got Venus, which is accurate to 99%. And then we got this planet 139.51. And this planet 139.51 will line up with the miracle of the sun at Fatima 2 orbits, which means it's 139 times 2. This is really incredible because 139 times 2 orbits, which is very, very miraculous, is 278. That is the number of times the word heaven appears in the New Testament, 278 times. And everything, so many things seem to line up at 2 orbits of 139. And I'm going to show you what they are. The Buddha's birthday is 1 orbit of 139. Jesus' Ascension Day, which again, because we're chasing it on a lunar calendar, lines up to 99.9 something percent accuracy to 1 orbit, and it'll drift down to 95% accuracy, and then it'll come back to 99.98% accuracy. John Denver's death day lines up to 2 orbits. The miracle of the sun at Fatima, which is October 13th, lines up to 2 orbits. And St. Francis's Ascension Day lines up to 2 orbits. And guess what else lines up to 2 orbits? The placing of, and I want people to see this because this is going to be Masonic proof, actual Masonic proof. So you go to White House Chief Cornerstone laid October 13th, 1792. And this is so incredible. The fact that, okay, on this day in history, the chief cornerstone for a Mason, this is actually on the History Channel. Okay, right here, just so people can see this. 1792, October 13th is, I believe, 225 years before Fatima. So you go 1917, the year of Fatima, which is when Easter was April the 8th, the date of our eclipse, and we minus 1792. Oh God, I just want to do this accurately. And 1917 minus 1792 is 125 years. That really interests me because one, it's before the miracle of the sun at Fatima. So the master stone builders must have known about planet 139 that comes into this miraculous harmony in 2 orbits between Mercury and Venus. Now, what also interests me about 125 years apart is it kind of reminds me of a Venus transit. So if I go to, first I'm going to show you the miracle of the sun has 2 events. Miracle of the sun at Fatima behaves like a Venus transit, but it's not a Venus transit. It's the transit of planet 139, which I'll show you in a second. So you go to, this is on Wikipedia. And again, what people saw October 13th, 1917 reminds me, there's different witness accounts. It reminds me of an annular eclipse, which is non-totality, where you get a ring of colors dancing around in the outer ring because you don't have totality. Remember, last year's eclipse, which is the anniversary of Fatima, was an annular eclipse. And it was October the 14th. Perfect. It's perfect timing if you do the math the way I've done it. It was seen by up to 100,000 people, but also 33 years later, Pope Pius XII saw the same thing in Rome 33 years later. Now, why is that amazing? Because that's what Venus transits do. Venus transits are kind of like it's a very rare event, actually. It happens, okay, look at this. So a transit of Venus Remember, we're looking for a planet between Venus and Mercury with 139 days. So it will eventually, over a period, transit Earth twice, and then we won't see it again for over 100 years. You see, transits of Venus occur periodically. A pair of transits takes place 8 years apart in December on the Gregorian calendar, which is what we're on now, followed by a gap of 121 and a half years. Before another pair occurs 8 years apart in June, followed by another gap of 105 and a half years. The dates advance by about 2 days per 243-year cycle. Now remember, my wife first called out my name 243 days after she died. That's a Venus day using Earth time. Sunrise to sunset on Venus is 243 Earth days. A year on Venus is just under 225 Earth years. So Venus won't even complete one day in one of its own years, right? But notice it's double paired. And then the next Venus transit on schedule, you see, we had one to 5th to 6th of June in 2012, right? Again, what happened in 2012 is Easter was on April the 8th. Now, the next Venus transits are due 10th to the 11th of December in 2117 and the 8th of December 2125, right? So those are several years apart, right? 2125. So in 2117. Now that's exactly what the miracle of the sun at Fatima did, because the Pope sees it 33 years later in Rome. And then that's why we're 107 years later, we haven't seen it again. But it has to happen again. It has to, because it is a real planet that is, there's two ways it can elude us. One, it can be in a state of actual antimatter. And I want to show people this so you know that I'm not speculating. This is in the real physics communities, that there is a phenomenon called antimatter solar system. So let's look on, I'm just going to share a screen here on this so people can see. Again, I mean, I've studied antimatter. I know it very well. I've looked at the photographs. I know what it does. So this is on a physicist page on the discovery of antimatter in 1932. And in fact, let's look at a real picture okay, here we go, right here. Let's go to this chapter called, in part of the syllabus, the symmetry in the syllabus says right here that once they were able to determine a complete hydrogen atom that was made out of antimatter, they next postulate it is certainly possible that there are antimatter galaxies with antimatter solar systems and maybe antimatter people. In Dirac's theory, we might say that the anti-people are holes in an infinite sea of negative energy. You have to know what that really means. But this is really real. And what the author speculates, and this is just the way the physics community is half of the physics community will agree that there could be antimatter planets, and half of them won't agree until you see data. But the data has been there all along. We've had the Star of Bethlehem that nobody has ever proven what caused it. We've had the darkening or the eclipse of the sun during the crucifixion of Christ, which never matched up with a Venus transit nor a lunar solar eclipse. And then we had the miracle of the sun at Fatima. So what astronomers today would say on half of that fence is, well, if we did the math and we studied the periods of these orbits, and the fact that if you're not calling the Pope crazy 33 years later for seeing the same thing in Rome, we have the phenomena of a transit of a planet that we don't know about. Why don't we know about it? Well, it's very clear what this apparition and the Tilma of Juan Diego is a whole story. It's a whole story in 1531. Because the technology that it would take to put the reflections of the observers in her eyes, and the fact that the tilma is not paint, It's in agave cactus fibers. It appears to be alive because it won't decay. People have tried detonating explosives right in front of it, and it doesn't blow up. It doesn't fade for hundreds and hundreds of years. But this black crescent moon under her feet is the key to Revelation 6:12 that there's another body in the solar system. And when this body arrives, I believe this body is the planet that the Nordic gods, that many ancient cultures, and possibly is the same planet that Sitchin speculates in. Well, he doesn't speculate, it's in the ancient Sumerian tablets that this, I mean, it could have an appearance in our dimension, being an antimatter planet fluctuating between the state of matter and antimatter and matter and antimatter. Right. So again, you go back to your pyramid angle, 26.3 degrees. We come to our current eclipse. And because there's one more graphic I want to show before we go into a conversation about this. When you go back to this graphic, you see the 26.3 degrees, right? Which is Great Pyramid angle. And remember, we added up all the angles of all the planets in our system, and we're missing 26.3 degrees to complete a full circle of 360 degrees. That should baffle astronomers. It should really baffle them because, but then there's one more. It's called the Bethlehem angle, discovered by Lemesurrier, who wrote the Great Pyramid Decoded. And the Bethlehem angle comes out of the Great Pyramid at 26.3 degrees. Right through Bethlehem, Great Pyramid. Same angle, Carrie.
Right.
So this is where it all opens to what this eclipse is really all about, and where we can go from here. Why would all three dates on all three eclipses correspond? Why? They're perfect.
Okay, so I mean that's amazing, and I have a graphic to show you to get your comment on. But before we do that, I want to drill down here. So what you're saying is, I mean, has a certain sense to it, definitely, and I'm sure mathematically it makes perfect sense. But what are you saying is going to happen on April 8th, and what does it mean? Like what is the symbolism of it, or the significance in to humans, I guess you might say?
Well, I would say, firstly, if nothing happens, it could be pointing to our missing planet showing up possibly the first time May 13th, because that's one orbit. And remember, when the miracle of the sun happened in 1917, the first date that the apparition of the mother appears to the three children is May 13th. So that's actually 139 days from December 25th. So I mean, it depends where your start date is on your new year, but you're going to be between 135 and 144 days. And 144 is a magical number, depending on where your start date is. So then October 13th, which could be the 14th or the 15th or even later, would be two orbits of 139. Now, not every year, every single year on those two dates, you're in harmony with this mysterious planetary body, but it won't transit between the Earth and the Sun, except for, like Venus, every 100 and something years. What's interesting about the Washington chief cornerstone for the White House is laid on October 13th, 225 years before Fatima, is they must have known about it. And the other thing is, if you take the height of the Washington Monument, and I have this exact somewhere in a folder, which is 555 point something feet. I mean, it's exact, divided by your four cardinal seasons. It's just under 139. It's 138.87. So again, there's two pieces of evidence that the early Masons knew the secret of the missing body in the solar system, and they may have intentionally kept it secret all this time. So when NASA is going to launch these three rockets in the shadow, the luminosity of that would obscure our ability to see anything that is low light visibility during this eclipse. That might be because they're afraid we're going to see this, because amateur astronomers are going to have their telescopes all over the place. But
Sure. Okay.
according to the math, the real date to watch for would be this coming mid-October, or, so let's go to Peter Missouri here, because your question is what will happen. I don't know if anything will happen on that date, but Peter Missouri's Great Pyramid Decoded, published in mid 1970s, one of the first books I ever read when I got out of high school, is he sees the Grand Gallery, the 26.3 degrees, every inch of it is a cosmic time clock. And what he says is in 2025, plus or minus 3 years, so that could be as late as 2028, we'll see the total collapse of the materialist civilization. Total collapse. And that by October 31st, 2034, the appearance in the sky of the sign of the next messianic return. Notice that that's October, but it's late October. And then the Christos incarnates in physical man October 21st, 2050. Now, he's not speculating here. This is all, you have to read Le Mesurier to know how he uses every inch going up the Grand Gallery into the chambers. He decodes its meaning and its angle and puts it in a timeline. So again,
Okay. Now,
yeah,
you know Sean David Morton, right?
sure, yeah,
And Sean, I think, talks about this as well. You know, I've had him on my show dozens of times, and he talks about the different angles of the Great Pyramid and how it pertains to different things happening in history, right, and going
right,
forward.
right.
So I think he might have gotten his information from that book to some degree.
Well, I think a lot of us did, but again, what I didn't know about until Crystal, my wife, spoke up my name at the 591 days, because then if I take 591 times the golden ratio, I'm going to be high accuracy in all the outer planets too. In fact, you can't do anything without the number 591, which again was for me a spiritual affirmation that we live on, like Dante said, in the solar system, but there's this higher order of harmonic planets above the known visible ones. So
Mhm.
if you also look in the book of Revelation, in the magic moment when the transformation to the fifth dimensional consciousness, people are calling it, happens, there's a new earth and new heavens, meaning we don't see the planets. I'll pull up my graphic again to show this in that great moment that is predicted to happen, which would be something of that can be explained by my graphic. So my graphic shows 591 divided by the golden ratio gives me every planet in their correct order all the way to Vulcan, and Vulcan was identified by astronomers, but it was called a hypothetical planet because it has an orbit of just under 20 days. My math shows 20.35. And again, the golden ratio isn't 100% perfect, but in nature, it varies. So 591 times the golden ratio will give me a planet at 956 days orbit. Then it will give me dwarf planet series, and it's quite accurate. It's really accurate. And then it gives me a planet with 2,500 days, and then it gives me Jupiter with a very high degree of accuracy. So at this point, I keep going above the firmament, below the firmament, above, below, with this mathematical formula all the way to Neptune with incredible accuracy, starting with this number 591. What's interesting about this model is Dante, the Italian poet, documents after death going through all of the known planets. He names the eighth and the ninth, but he doesn't call them Uranus and Neptune because in Dante's time, we didn't even identify Uranus and Neptune an eighth and a ninth position planet. But what
What about Pluto? You didn't mention that.
Okay, so yeah, so Pluto is not in this model, but Pluto does fall into my golden ratio
Okay.
591. I have a separate paper that shows the mathematical accuracy to 591 in the golden ratio. So I mean that, let me show you. There is another graphic, and I should have it. Um, I should have it. I'm not sure if it's in. Here we go. 591 solar system model. Here it is. So this one,
Okay.
yeah.
But okay. So go ahead and do that because I want to ask you some things.
Okay, so this was my first graphic I created before I put my ascension planets in an above the firmament formula. So 591 divided by the golden ratio once is Earth. It's the period of Earth. Divided by the golden ratio squared is Venus. Divided by the golden ratio cubed is planet 591 to the third power. Divided by the golden ratio to the fourth power is Mercury, and so on. 591 times the golden ratio once is this or to the golden ratio squared would be Ceres. So the question is, why does this golden ratio formula, starting with the number 591, resolve all this? But it shows a planet at 139 days, and this 139-day orbit planet resolves Fatima. It resolves the moment of the crucifixion and what caused the darkening of the skies above Jerusalem. It probably resolves the Christmas star of Bethlehem as well, but we don't have the math available on that. So I believe this eclipse denotes all this because of the 3 dates. We have the anniversary of Fatima, Jesus's real birth, according to Urantia, is August 21st, which can be mathematically proven because if I go August 21st plus 139 days, I arrive at January 7th, which is the real Christmas of the Orthodox Church, which is the first church. And if I go another 139 days, I come to Jesus's ascension date. So why does 139 resolve all that?
Yeah, it's
Because
very interesting. But
yeah.
now I have a question. Oh, I have a couple of things. So it's interesting. 591 could also be 19.5. You know
You're
how
right. Richard
Richard
Hoagland noted
Hoagland,
that. You got it. It's in the mirror. It's
yeah,
19 point, and notice with antimatter, everything's in reverse.
right.
So if you write 19.5 and put it in your mirror, it's 591.
But this relates to, I think it's, well, maybe the pyramid on Mars and maybe the face on Mars. I'm not sure. He explains all that. But there's also a reason why at 19.5 here on Earth, certain things happen periodically at that point when certain things reach that
Well,
that.
it's
So,
an angle, but it's more than an angle, and that's what, because Richard
and
had
he
one.
said you could look at any planet at 19.5, and I think there was something special like with Uranus, for example.
Right. Well, notice that in the Greek New Testament, it was written in Greek. The word for heaven is Uranus. And
Um,
Uranus is the goddess, God, who cohabited with Gaia to create the Titans, who create the Olympians, who create the human race. So why would they use that word in a Christian manuscript and then the Christian church changes it to the word heaven, which is a speculative meaning, but heavens, if you look at Revelation properly, when Jesus is pointing his finger to the 7 stars are not stars, they're the 7 known planets in antiquity. So their heavens are planets, not a speculative other dimensional place. So why the word Uranos, which is again is the goddess who cohabited with Gaia to create the Titans? This is in the Greek myths. Why would the Bible use that and then change that word to heaven? And nobody looks at, well, what does it really mean? It means Uranos. And so why would the first Christians convince the Greek authors that Jesus was referring to heaven as a Greek god? See, that just turns everything upside down in a harmony and an order of planets in the creation, right?
right.
So that changes everything.
Okay, but now because I know that people listening, and by the way, we do have a chat room on this YouTube, and I stumbled on it, so I might be able to ask if people want to ask questions. If you put a question mark in your comment then maybe we can ask David some of your questions as well. But Okay, so there's a few things that I want to touch on. So one thing is on the day when this thing is happening, there is something else going on. And I wonder if I'm going to try to share something on my screen because I've got this graphic that I've already showed it or talked about it. I don't know if I showed it. Okay, so hold on. I have to do it a different way. But anyway, one second. This is, I'm not sure there's anything here, but it is interesting. And it's not me who discovered it, someone else on their channel. So can you see that graphic right
Oh,
now?
yeah, yeah, yeah. What you need to know about April 8th strange synchronicity space.
Okay, so this is just very interesting. I made this graphic, okay, but I combined two things. One is the projected eclipse, trajectory. The other happens to be the Space Force logo and the fact that you see how the logo, this line on the logo crosses
Oh,
the exact
yeah, yeah.
same.
Oh, wow.
Now, this might substantiate what you're saying because if they put it on their logo, then it goes back in history because you know how they always do that kind of thing with NASA and everything.
That's incredible because the first orbital curve would be the October 14th eclipse last year. And the October 14th eclipse last year, the angle is slightly different, but very close to the graphic, ends at the Chichen Itza El Castil pyramid and is the anniversary date of Fatima being October 14th. Remember, on our planet, you get two dates at a certain time of day. There's two dates on the planet at any given time. And plus we have the leap year and the extra decimal every 130 something years. You actually have to add another day, which I don't think we do. So the second line there looks very close to the eclipse we're about to have, which again, remember in the churches, there was a debate to give us the real Easter, which on the Roman Julian calendar apparently was April 6th or 7th. And again, now we're at April 8th.
Well,
And I
don't forget it's a different time on the earth in different places.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have you have two dates on the same
So, yeah.
day.
So anyway, but I thought that was kind of interesting. I wanted to show you that. So that's one thing. Another
Well,
thing
that is.
is that Richard Allen Miller is a physicist. I don't know if you've ever seen my interviews with him, but I've interviewed him dozens of times. You know who he is?
No, I don't know Richard Allen Miller.
Okay,
Maybe
well
I see his face.
he's a
Uh,
master magus on top of being a physicist. He worked in black projects and works for Navy intelligence. He freely admits that. I know him very well. Over the years, I've even gone to his house and filmed him there. So the thing is that he said about the NASA missiles that are being shot that he thinks they are being shot into the Van Allen belt and that there's something to do with what he says is the Van Allen belt is an entity. Now, when you ask him eventually, you can say that all planets are entities. In other words, it's a consciousness. And so, the universe is a consciousness. So, but there's something special about shooting these missiles into the Van Allen belt that they might be trying to either open a portal or a direct path through the Van Allen belt because it's weakening. That's another, you may know that, okay, that they have, scientists have determined that the Van Allen belt is weakening and it protects Earth as it happens. So that's one thing. And then he said that they're aiming it through or to the Van Allen belt. Now, there's also arguably whether missiles contain a payload that they're delivering something there or whether they're trying to hit something there, So I don't know which it is. So
well,
just throwing that out.
the Van Allen belt contains antimatter, and if they're trying to, because this just in the past year, it was published in all the physics communities and all the papers that antimatter, when it's created, it's still bound by the laws of gravity. So an antimatter planet would theoretically be bound in orbit around our sun. But most of the antimatter in the solar system is that's active is in the belts. So Saturn's belts apparently has the most, but locally the Van Allen belt, it only takes a tiny amount of antimatter to allow you to open a hole to the antimatter universe that has been
Okay.
postulated.
And now I have to talk about CERN, because CERN creates portals and some people think, oh, this is like now they're going to create a portal. That's a lie. They've done, that is what a linear accelerator actually does. Okay. So they're doing this constantly. But one of the main portals they've created and they keep open, in case you haven't heard, is a direct portal to the Draco galaxy, which allows the reptilians to come in with their large ships that are apparently larger than our normal portals here on Earth. And they can come under the cover of darkness and war and pick up humans and take them off planet and trade them in slave ships and so on and so forth. So that's another piece of information that comes from Captain Mark Richards, who's in prison, who I've interviewed 12 times in person. And so their CERN is also got the, Shiva, right? In the goddess,
Right.
God Shiva or goddess, and in the front, and they are always doing these occult rituals in front of Shiva at CERN in certain significant times, as you may or may not know. And so there's something going on because they're going to open, probably do another portal exactly on this date, April 8th, supposedly.
Well, they are. It's on their website. Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's public knowledge. So what I'm saying here is we've got NASA doing 3 missiles, CERN doing something to open a portal, and we've got at least Richard Allen Miller saying that he thinks it's headed for the Van Allen belt. Now, I don't know if that's, he knows what he knows and he's maybe intel. So I don't know, whether we're being led down the wrong path or the right path, but just throwing these things out so you can consider them. And then what we're looking at here is there's all kind of predictions. Now I've got another prediction for you, and I've written an article about this, which has to do with the idea. And it's interesting. Josh Reed was just on, he's ex-military. You may not know him, but he was just on Nino's show and he was talking about this, which is there's something about occulting the moon or occulting the sun. When you occult the sun, entities come in. When you occult the moon, they go out, if I understand it correctly. So it's interesting coincidence because there has been some rumblings, and I got a piece of intelligence from another source, and he told me that there's a Space Force person who is upset and got kind of sequestered, is now in confinement right now because he came in protest about what he thinks or what he was told that Space Force is going to do the blue beam fake alien invasion starting on April 8th, and that he somehow was going to come out and protest it in some form or fashion. And then he got locked down. I got this information because, well, I probably shouldn't say, I'm not going to say. Okay. So, but I don't want to get anyone in trouble. So that's a very interesting leak, right? It didn't quite make it out, but it did make it out to a friend of a friend. And that friend is related to that person somehow. And so what happens is if that piece of intel is correct, then maybe indeed they also have a plan, right? And it does coincide with this idea of opening portals, letting in entities, bringing in, which a lot of, and I was with Randy Kramer at this conference in Yelm, Washington, actually 4 years ago. And he came on, he's a Marine. He's still a Marine. He had his Marine commander there or whatever it was. And he came on stage and said to this very small conference where I was also speaking that in 3 years, they would be doing their fake alien invasion because they want to make people aware that aliens are real, so they're going to use, like CGI and all kinds of holograms and such, but in order to make the public aware, and they would do it through this type of a narrative of some kind. He wouldn't say what kind of aliens they would use, but I suggested that because I was in the audience and I said, how are you going to do a fake alien invasion when the real one is already happening? And he got triggered and, came down off the stage and came stomping over to me and looked like he was just going to beat the hell out of me.
Whoa.
And it was all filmed. But then the film of all the conferences and all the talks disappeared, was never
Whoa.
saw the light of day, including my own. And so, these are things that are, add up to some maybe. Now, it doesn't mean they're not going to change their mind and not do it. I'm not, I don't know what they're doing, but there have been, that even the thing at the mall in Florida with what I think was more the tall whites. But see, there are aliens on both sides of the question, off planet and inner Earth beings and reptilians under the ground, who have their tunnels and all of that, and the grays and so on. So they all have vested interest in participating or not participating in any kind of disclosure, in any kind of space, force, secret space program. And they could also take part pretending to be fake aliens when in fact they're real, because they can go interdimensional or whatever it is. All I'm trying to say is that there's this thing about opening portals. So you've got CERN, you've got NASA suspiciously shooting missiles that might, pierce through something or create something. So just throwing all that out,
Well,
because
what you're bringing up for me, in the same way when crop circles were real, they brought in the fake circle makers
that's true.
so that you wouldn't know, the common person would no longer look at the real circles because they would say it's all fake. And a fake ET hologram could be being demonstrated when a real event is occurring to obscure the masses. So they'll go, look, it's all fake. And meanwhile, there's a real thing happening on top of a fake blue beam, so that the public will just go, the whole thing is an illusion. And that's how they cover it up.
Yeah, no, and they also did that with the alien autopsy. In case you don't know, they made a fake one and there was a
Sure.
real one. And I have so much documentation and involved.
That's why he came after you, because he thought he was going to beat the crap out of you, and they deleted all the videos because you just mentioned the key point is they could put the blue beam on top of the real one and then everyone will look away. So again, why does that space?
Well, I think that's what happened at the Florida Mall. We've had these sort of sightings, and there's one down in Peru where this whole village is up in arms because a woman was kidnapped. She then came back, but they basically have these aliens showing up down there. They can't explain it. They say it's not a lie. People think it's a hoax. There's tons of stuff going on right now with all these little
Well, I've
incidents.
even mapped, Carrie, like I've mapped all the famous apparitions of the Mother Mary in Cairo, Egypt in 1968, and I've done the ones at Medjugorje, and I can see the dates when she comes in and leaves, and I
Right.
know which planet she's in harmony with, and they're all perfectly organized. Like I'll show you
Right.
here another image of the
And well, let me see one last thing
yeah,
about
yeah.
this. This thing the military freely admits they wanted to do. This was to a group, a conference group. But anyway, is that they want to show the narrative mostly on like television, and so that people will buy into it and they will be the winners. So they want to prove to the public that they're still in control of Earth, because even if aliens show up, they have the technology to fight them and win. So just saying
Okay.
that.
Right. So watch this. So share screen. I'm going to go to my Tilma image again. I decided because there was criticism on the angle of the mother's face being 23.5 degrees, which is the angle of Earth. And being a photo expert and having won awards in photography, I did it myself. So the way you correct the angle of her tilt is you go from the nose to the central line of the head.
Mm.
And then you bring that nose tip back to your center line established by the very center of her hands. She's 26.3 degrees. Now watch this. I'll go back to, she's not 23.5. She is 26.3, which is the angle of our missing planet. So again, you come to here and have in
Yeah.
mind the space logo. She appears, so remember, the eclipse is going to start in Mexico. So this apparition to Juan Diego is right down here where it's just north of Mexico City, right?
Oh,
And
right.
that location will be very near totality. They'll probably be at 90%, 87% in where that occurred. Now notice, because her head is tilted at 26.3 degrees, is she prophetically pointing to these three eclipses that will create a triangle at 26.3 degrees, because that's the same tilt angle as her head, which would again put all importance on this date. So if NASA knows that there's intelligentsia coming and they create a blue beam on top of it and say, like you're saying, it's all fake, they'll get everyone to look away. And by firing the three rockets, there may be a purpose to that that's legitimate, but the luminosity of three rockets will obscure, if there's good weather anywhere. I mean, I don't know. The weather forecasts don't look very good, actually, for a lot of the people in these
Well, then
eclipses.
it will obscure for us. But see,
Yeah,
weather is all manipulated. You know that right now, right?
yeah, now
We
you
have
can get
weather
into
wars.
that.
Yeah.
Right, there's a whole other place you're going there that makes sense why they would mess up the weather.
Yeah.
They
To
don't want
obscure
anyone to
our view of,
see.
and let's keep in mind that three rockets is a triangle, right?
Right.
So that's something to just consider. Okay, now, but I want to ask you about, is this planet that you think exists that is coming in and out of visibility, so to speak, or in this dimension, you're going interdimensional? I would call it going
Yeah,
interdimensional,
you could
going
call it going
dimensional.
interdimensional, or is it cloaked because it's the planet of,
Exactly. Yes. And
yeah.
yes. And okay, but so is this like Nibiru? Is that what you're thinking?
Well,
Is
I'm wondering, I don't know
associated
that.
with the Anunnaki? This is the question.
Yeah, I think it's associated with the Anunnaki. I think it's the planet of the gods and goddesses that again caused, because look how perfectly it's timed on Jesus's crucifixion. You know, the earth goes dark. And then you also have Fatima and you have the Star of Bethlehem. So we also have in other cultures similar phenomena that don't line up to eclipse dates of the known eclipsers, which would be a Venus transit. A Mercury transit is very faint, but even during a Mercury transit, which I experienced in Sedona, actually experienced the Venus transit in Sedona, you really feel it. There is a dimming of the light. The light does change to another vibration. So I would say, is it possible that the period of time that Nibiru appears is correct, but its orbit is not so far and long? Think of how cold it would be at the extremities of Nibiru's orbit, right? Unless they had some type of, way to capture the thermal heat from the core of the planet. And why would that be a preferable life to ours? Now, if the 10th planet, as Zechariah said, the 12th planet is which he named it, is really closer in orbit to us, which would explain the dark crescent at the feet of the mother in the apparition to Juan Diego, means it's much closer than we think, but it's interdimensional, and therefore because there's a balance on our planet between matter and antimatter. There's always, guess
Yeah.
where we get most of our antimatter
Okay, wait. I want to ask you if you know
lightning
about
strike.
the island off of the coast of somewhere like Ireland or Scotland or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And
What's the name of
it
that place?
materializes, and in the complete opposite side of the earth is China, and it materializes there, and then it disappears, and then it appears.
That's a good point you're bringing up. So we
It's a
have
very interesting island, and I've had testimony about that.
appearing and disappearing. So that's like Vulcan. I mean, I could bring up a graphic of Vulcan. So planet Vulcan did exactly this to astronomers, which is why they wrote it off. So again, I'll
And
put
and
this
one
up.
other thing along the lines of consciousness of planets.
Mhm.
Cameron Faley, who is somebody I interviewed a number of times, got really hung up into this Nibiru thing, and he was a financial expert. So he actually worked for the City of London. His whole family. He's a Kurd, and he's a very interesting man and fascinating interviews. But what he said was that the planets had consciousness and that they would actually, I know this is going to sound strange to people, but they would move out of the way. So there would be no collision. So it's
Well,
an
William
interesting idea.
Tiller demonstrated in all his consciousness experience mathematically that when consciousness is focused, coherent, it's more powerful than gamma radiation, which means it can do anything.
Yeah.
So watch this. When you look at Vulcan, of course, Spock is named after Vulcan. Its position is closer to the sun than Mercury. Mercury's radius is the identical measurement of the cubic city of God, the New Jerusalem that comes out of the sky in the end of Revelation. And that's very, very curious. So in this article on Vulcan on Wikipedia, people can go here. And again, I find it just fascinating that Spock is from planet Vulcan. And Vulcan to the ancient Romans and Greeks is the god of the forging and the melting of metals. When you come down here in these, they were even looking at this in telescopes in the United States, and they were seeing it. I'm just trying to find the point of the orbit in here. Between 1866 1878, no observations of the hypothetical planet were made. Then, during the total solar eclipse of July 28th, two astronomers, Professor James Craig Watson, the director of Ann Arbor, Michigan, claimed to have seen Vulcan close to the sun. Differentiate. So notice it's during an eclipse. It's during an eclipse that they could see this invisible planet Vulcan.
Well, it is said, I've heard that
That says it all right there.
Uranus is connected to metals as well, and that and the number 23, and also it has to do with change. 23, in the tarot and in astrology is all to do with sudden change. As a matter of fact, that's what Uranus also governs.
And so here it is. Here it is. So right above this paragraph, where they could see it during the eclipse. So notice they needed an eclipse to see it. And this is the location was Denver, Colorado, where they took their telescopes to see it. And right above this, it said it had an orbit of 19 days and 22 hours. So you're just under 20, right? So
Right.
again, you go back to my model using the golden ratio and the number 591. Remember, they're just under 20. I want to bring this point home because in my model, which I developed before I even knew about Vulcan, Vulcan would have an orbit of 20.35 days. So why are all of their orbits, visible and non-visible, falling within the golden ratio to 591 planets from Mars out and from Mars in? We maintain this high degree of accuracies in the high 90 something percent mark, and Earth being 99.999. So Vulcan mathematically fits the model, but yet they see it and then they don't see it. And that's the part that interests me. And we just saw in the data there that they could see it during this eclipse. So they must know. And do they keep it secret, Carrie? Does NASA know
Sure.
about 139? Well, because the Masons knew, because the Washington Monument Chief Cornerstone is late October 13th, which is when, in fact, Yom Kippur. Let me show you how Yom Kippur, this is mind-blowing because it's Yom Kippur. Okay, so this is a good screenshot here. I'm going to have to go in about 20 minutes, get my daughter. This is why a lunar calendar has dates spread out in the fashion. This is our moon photographed over a period of one lunar month, right? Which is 28 days. So now look at a calendar on Yom Kippur, which is right here. Okay, look at this. This is incredible. So we go share screen, Yom Kippur. This is Yom Kippur over a 24-year calendar. Now notice it comes into my October 11th, 12th, 13th date 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times over a 24-year period, right? They're talking Yom Kippur. This is the most holy date for the ancient Israelites every year. So that means it's in alignment with planet 139, right? Because December 25th, so September 27th is the bottom. You see this right down here? The midline of Yom Kippur is equal to 2 orbits of planet 139. So that's its midline, but it comes to my magic October date 6 times over the 24-year period because they're chasing a lunar calendar. And when you're chasing a date on a lunar calendar from Earth, it does exactly what the moon does. It goes up and down and up and down. So why do we have so many alignments to mid-October and also mid-May, which is when the Buddha's birth date is celebrated every year, also comes into alignment to 1 orbit, right? So I think all the data points to this hidden planet has been known, and the Masons knew, because you take the height of the Washington Monument divided by 4, and you've got just under 139 times 4. So you clearly see the evidence that the Masons knew. Do they actually know? Does NASA actually know? And they've always known, and they've kept it a secret from us forever, is a distinct possibility.
Okay. Now I just want, before you go, if possible, maybe we can take some questions here
Yeah.
in the chat.
Yeah, let's take some questions because I have about another 10 minutes before I have to jump.
Okay. So put a question mark, guys, if you want to ask him a question, and hopefully this chat is still live. I never know what's, going to go on here, but
Or not, just have to
I've
read
got
it.
lots of chatter going on, but I don't know if there's a question. So, I don't know if there's any.
We don't even know if we're live. We don't know yet.
Well, it looks like we are. And the chat was going by. I was seeing it go by. So to be honest, I don't know what's going on here. Hold on. It says, yeah. So 26,000 years, there's a cycle
You're
of
talking
the
about
planet
precession.
X, planet X.
Oh, Planet X.
Yeah. And something like, I don't know what this person is saying. Oh yeah, it's live. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So ask a question, someone. Okay. What about 40 days after the solar eclipse? Someone.
Okay, so you're right. That's Jesus's ascension day. That's a good question because Jesus' ascension day is always 40 days after Easter. And this year that'll put us around May 25th, I think. Let me just get it exact. So you go April 8 plus 40 days. We're in a leap year this year, by the way. So it will be May 18th. Now notice that's mid-May. So that's exactly, remember, the Mother Mary appeared to the 3 children at Fatima May 13th. So May 18th is you're only 5 days. And again, so your harmonic is perfect. So this year, because Jesus Ascension Day will line up with that. What is Jesus's Ascension Day? Well, it's 40 days after the real Easter. I'm calling this eclipse the real Easter. If we go with the traditional Easter, will be his ascension date this year. You have 2 dates because you have the Orthodox Church, which is the oldest church, because James, the brother of Jesus, founded the first actual church in Jerusalem. He was beheaded and stoned to death in 62 AD. So you got 2 churches that disagree, but the real date of accuracy is really the Orthodox Church. So this year, if what all of this is showing is we're off track, the real date of Easter is April 8th, as it was in 2012, April 8th, as it was in 1928, and in 1917, it was April the 8th. So
But
I would
still, let's
say,
but before you go, can we gel it down to what the significance is to us now this year? In other words, why now? Why
yeah,
this
and
year?
that's the big question. So you take your angle 26.3 degrees. Will something happen when the sun rises in the east? Because at 26.3 degrees, um, we have to mark the time of that. Does it mean that the next messianic return, according to Peter Lamazurier, which is October 20 something that he has here in the year 2039, October 21st, which again is pretty much mid-October, is going to happen in the United States somewhere within that triangle, or according to the Bethlehem angle, 26.3 degrees, it would put him in lower Illinois somewhere. Is that what it means? I can only speculate, but I
Okay,
can.
someone is saying that the NASA rockets are named after deities. Do you know what the three?
Yeah, it's named after a serpent deity. Again,
Oh,
notice how
right.
the moon's
Yeah.
path looks like a serpent. Notice how
But that's
astronomers,
again a reptilian thing.
right, and notice how astronomers could see planet Vulcan during an eclipse, but not in normal daylight time because of the brightness. So the moon's path creating a serpent's tail, the rockets going in the path of the moon, very, very symbolic.
Okay. So I have I guess there are other people ask. I mean, there's a lot of chat going on here. So I'm gonna see if there's anything. He says, talk about the relevance of Urantia. And you can read the
Okay, so
Urantia book, but
I'll show
the,
you your
some
ranches.
people disagree with some of the things in Urantia, but it seems
Of course,
it's quite
naturally.
substantial.
You're always going to get a certain amount of people. When somebody disagrees, what I like,
And let me just say that I think it was Juan O'Savin recently has been talking about the real. I think I think he's saying the birth of Christ is in Pisces
right.
for whatever relationship that has to what you're talking about. Because you're talking
So
about
let me go to
his
the your
ascension.
rancha, because that's a very, why August 21st? And there was an eclipse, somebody pointed out to me, October 22nd, that marked the Iroquois Indians forming a council, and that was a quite an ancient eclipse. But when we
But
come to,
so in this case, this is a solar eclipse, right?
yeah, a
So
solar eclipse involves the moon being the
the
purple.
moon in between the earth and the sun,
Right,
correct?
right.
Okay, so let me say this. In terms of the moon being darkness, symbolizes the feminine, but also darkness. And that is in the occult, this would be like a negative situation. Okay. So when the sun is being occulted, made dark, then you would say, that the light is being hidden by the darkness. And this is why they would do they're going to do a lot of these horrible satanic rituals during that time.
Oh, of course, because they're going to try and block it. So here we go. Here's Urantia explained why August 21st. So if we have a start date, you can see on the of August 21st plus 139 days, we'll come to what the Orthodox Church says January 7th, which is why they celebrate Christmas January 7th, which is Tesla's birthday, by the way. And also the date of the Stephenville UFO case. We're going to have to do a part 2 about the Miracle of the Sun date, October 13th, 1917. And every 5 years, you get a major UFO sighting all the way to the current date. All of them fit within 5 years. So again, August 21st plus 139 days is the real, it's the day he became Christed. It's not his physical birthday. In the original book of Matthew, used by the original church in Jerusalem, headed by James, it was January the 6th and 7th. And plus another 139 days, we come to Jesus's ascension date, May 25th. For again, with the lunar calendar, you'll come in and out of May 25th being his ascension date. So why do those 3 dates form in a perfect triangle starting from August 21st? Because that's his real physical birthday. So it's perfect math, right?
Okay, let me ask you
Yeah.
this. Could the astronomers use your 139 number to track this planet,
Yes.
and make it visible? In other words, using special telescopes, knowing the position of it by
That's the ultimate,
matters.
and that's what I need. I need somebody who has an astronomy program to work with me to put in the orbit of a hypothetical planet starting on the date of Fatima, because that would be its transit between Earth, the sun, and in its orbit in the Earth, and creating its shadow crossing the location of Fatima, and then 33 years later in Rome. So once I have that, your question is the ultimate question. We know where it is today. We
Right.
will. And I don't know how to do that. I need help, people. So I need somebody
Okay.
who is an astronomer who sees this to contact Carrie, to contact me, and we can do this. And that's
Yeah,
the
because that
final
would be pretty
question here.
cool. That
This
would
is
be
where
pretty
this
cool.
needs to go, because then I
Yeah.
can put Vulcan in there. And then I can and then I can put all my hypothetical planets in the golden ratio, and we'll see where they currently are.
Well, I mean, I know someone has said to me that actually there are many more planets in our solar system than we know. That's what they said.
There you go. And I think they know. Well, again, why did we make Star Trek and this in the character Spock as a being from planet Vulcan? And the ancient Romans knew about Vulcan, and they have a god attributed to Vulcan, which is, I mean, he goes by Vulcan in Roman, and I think the Greek is Hephaestus, or it's the other way around. The melter of metals. Did you know metal will not melt, steel will not melt on Mercury, but it will on Vulcan, because if you know the temperature of the location, it was. So why did they name him the forger of metals, which is what the god Vulcan Hephaestus is?
Okay, now you know
That's
about this secret about why NASA has this V, right?
oh wow, wow.
Because that relates to everything too.
Right. And there's one more thing I forgot to show you, Carrie, which is a physical manifestation that happened right here, Easter morning. I've got to show this before I leave. I could be a little late to pick up my daughter because I really want to show this. This happened
Okay, I
Easter
don't
morning.
want you to be late though. I mean,
Oh no,
really.
this is important though. I got to
Okay,
show you
all
this.
right.
So we go to share screen. You have to end your share screen.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, now watch this. This happened right on my property. My my dog's dish. This is Easter morning. This ice formation occurs,
Oh, wow.
and it's actually exactly the Great Pyramid angle. So I'll stop share there really quick, and I'm going to show you the still photo of it so you can see it. That is, and it's exact
Hmm.
right here. Share screen. This is on my Facebook for people who want to see this. You see this picture on the right here? This pyramid here with the base here on a protractor, which I do in the video, is exactly Great Pyramid angle manifested on the ice
Wow.
Easter morning. Now, how could that possibly be? Like, I'm not using any technology. And again, if you take, this is really important for people to see as my last item, my graphic. If you take the height of the Great Pyramid of Egypt in 480.69 feet, exact finished, if it had a capstone, divided by pi, you get the number 153, which is the number of Mary Magdalene. And it's also the number of fishes the apostles caught upon the resurrection of Christ. Jesus in Acts 4:10 through tells refers to himself as the missing cornerstone, which again, of course, he was raised in Egypt. That would mean he's speaking about the missing cornerstone. And then again, the White House lays the chief cornerstone October 13th. Notice Matthew 16:18 is the golden ratio. I say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. 480.69 feet times the golden ratio is exactly 777.77 feet. So why again that manifested in my dog's dish? I mean,
That's
and it's
incredible.
perfect. It's
But
perfect.
see, you know about the theory. Nassim Harriman talks a lot about it, but the fractal universe, right?
Right.
So this is where that comes in. You do understand that, right?
It's a manifestation of, and that means it's a natural vibration that it would appear in my dog's bowl. But with that, I've got to run to get my
All
daughter.
right. This has been fabulous, and I'm so happy you contacted me and everything because I
And I'm
didn't
glad
know
we did
you
this.
had all these ideas.
Oh yeah, I'm making a documentary film about this that will be spectacular. That will
All
be
right.
much more clear. So it'll come out next year. Thank you,
Excellent.
Carrie.
All
Have a
right.
great day.
Stay in touch with me and you
I
can come
will.
back and let's do more. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching. All right, I hope we're here. We're still alive. I don't know what just happened, but anyway, so just want to say, everyone, thanks for being here. I hope that we didn't shut down just now, and that we're still alive. But if we're not, whatever. So I don't know. They're just sending me a message. So anyway, everyone, take care, and think positive thoughts and dispel the darkness with your consciousness. And actually I'm doing another show on this whole story, with a couple other people on Thursday at noon Pacific time, so assuming that works out. So thanks for watching, and take care. Okay.